As reflected in your program, we're very fortunate to have two members of Congress here to offer some remarks. The first is Representative Derek Kilmer, representing the 6th Congressional District in the state of Washington. The congressman is a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and they're, I'm sure, going to have hearings coming up once the new Congress is in session, looking at the administration's approach to the offset strategy. So if you would join me in welcoming Congressman Kilmer. Sir.
I was supposed to talk about his roguish good looks.
Yeah, he asked me how I should be introduced. I suggested a certain Han Solo-like quality, but thank you. First of all, I want to thank the CSBA for hosting today's events, and Mr. Martinage for authoring the report, and Chairman Forbes, who I think you'll be hearing from later, for his continued leadership concerning the maintenance and development of our Navy. So I have the privilege of representing a community that is tied to the Navy, both on a personal and economic basis. For more than 100 years, my community has been involved in supporting fleet operations by maintaining ships and submarines, by conducting research, development, test, and evaluation efforts, and being the home port to a carrier strike group and a submarine group. Although I cannot see Russia from my house, my district's position on the west coast of our nation leaves me with little room to shrug off potential concerns that some other nations pose on the Pacific. And I think, as this report aptly points out, some of these nations are developing and implementing technologies that are reducing our military's competitive advantages. As Mr. Martinage asserts, these foreign advances increase operational and strategic risk to our forces. We can't continue to rely on the assured level of success that our traditional means and methods of projecting power from land bases, from large capital ships, and communications via satellite currently provide. So strategically, we need to maintain our capability and posture to assure allies that we have their backs and can act effectively when warranted. We also need to consider the costs associated with defending ourselves from these new technological advances that could overwhelm or deplete our current capabilities. Wisely, the Department of Defense has recognized that we need to double down in the U.S. and support future technology that can not only maintain our advantage but also grow it. As someone who's keenly supportive of our scientific communities and our research communities, I agree with the Department's effort on this front. Obviously, one of the challenges we have is sequestration. I believe sequestration is a Latin word for stupid. But it really complicates our ability to make these sorts of investments on the cutting edge. But frankly, sequestration and those fiscal realities that we face make it all the more important that we do drive some of these investments. So finding a path to ease the smart and needed investments in tomorrow's capability is, I think, just of critical importance. That path should not only relieve stress to the Department of Defense, but also to non-defense research that's conducted at our colleges and universities, and frankly within the private sector as well. After all, capability enhancements that translate to real power projection capability can come from a number of sources. Whether we solve sequestration or not, we need to prioritize the scarce resources that we have into maintaining our dominance, particularly on the seas. As you've heard, Mr. Martinage's report highlights 4 key competencies in order to do that. And 2 of these, undersea warfare and unmanned systems and automation, may yield significant contributions to our capability. Smart investments that leverage our existing platforms and multiply the options of commanders to satisfy requirements have to be our priority. The survivability, diversity, and security offered in the undersea domain have yet to fully be realized. And that's why I'm excited to see what our nation can do in this space in the years ahead. As you mentioned, I think this is going to be an important item of conversation on the House Armed Services Committee, and I want to again thank you all for your time. Thank Mr. Martinage for this thoughtful contribution to the discussion, and again thank Chairman Forbes for his terrific leadership. All right, thank you.
It's indeed a pleasure to have Congressman Forbes with us this morning. You have his bio in your agenda there. This gives me an opportunity to thank the Congressman for sponsoring this event, this room, which we deeply appreciate. But it also gives me an opportunity to say what's not in the sketchy bio there, which is, if you think about it, the Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee not only has the maritime forces in it, but also our long-range bomber and tanker forces. So this is the heart of Bob Martinage's offset strategy country, point number one. And the second point I'll make is you have to search far and wide in Congress to find someone who knows more about defense in general, and certainly the issues that affect his subcommittee in particular than Congressman Forbes. This is not news to you, but it's great for people like us who try and support members of Congress to have someone who is an expert on these issues that we can speak to. So without any further delay, please welcome Congressman Randy Forbes from the great state of Virginia.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. And Bob, thank you for this report that you've issued. I can tell you I've not only read it, it's sitting on my desk, it's all marked up with squiggly lines and yellow highlights, and I don't agree with everything you've put in there. I know you'll find that as a shock, but I agree with so many of the things that you put in there. And I just want to thank you all for being here. I don't know how we define crisis. I mean, I don't really know if there is a semantics that I can bring to bear today to give you an accurate description for that. But I think we are either in or dangerously close to a crisis when it comes to national defense in this country. And I think part of that concern is because we are no longer doing the kind of planning and strategic thinking that we really need to do. And so when you hear concepts like the offset strategies that Bob is talking about, and you see people wanting again to think about those kinds of thoughts, and you see individuals at the Pentagon and people writing about that, I think that's encouraging to all of us who care a great deal about national defense. And as I've talked to members of Congress here, and we all realize that we simply can't build our way out or buy our way out of some of the concerns we have with national defense today. It's going to require a return to that kind of strategic thinking. And Bob has emphasized over and over, he's testified that what he's talking about here is not a large national defense strategy, but it's a component that I think is a very vital component. And that's why I'm excited as we begin to talk about that and look at those kinds of issues, and glad that you're here bringing this kind of brain power to bear on these very crucial questions. And let me just tell you also, one of the concerns is we look back at when we've looked at these kind of strategies in the past, was the 50s or the 70s. One of the things that also kind of echoes out there for us is the realization that no matter what kind of strategies develop, unless we have the funding to be able to implement those, the strategies just remain words on paper, and they don't really do what they need to do. So I think this is a great first step. But what I'm continuing to urge our members to realize is that unless we can, first of all, pull sequestration off when it comes to national defense, and then secondly, begin to ask the question, what do we really need for national defense? We're not going to be able to implement these kinds of strategies. I am excited. I think we have a greater window right now to be able to do that on Capitol Hill than I've seen in a long time. I see a lot of movement with our members beginning to want to ask these questions and answer them. I told someone the other day, I said, I really don't know who the speaker would go to, or the majority leader in the Senate, or the chairman of the budget committees, if you said, okay, take sequestration off, but then what is the dollar amount that we want to put in there? There's no real person that they could go to answer that question. And so we need on Capitol Hill to be not a replica of the Department of Defense, but a department of ideas, beginning to think strategically, planning how we're going to walk into the next 10 years when it comes to national defense. And I see that beginning to take shape up here, and so for that, I'm very excited about it. And I'm very excited, Bob. Thank you for the great work you've done, and we appreciate all of you being here to contribute to that. And as you saw, I didn't get to hear Derek's presentation, but I'm sure the one thing that you can walk away from, this is on a bipartisan basis, which I think is even more exciting. So, Bob, thanks for your good work. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here with you today.
Thank you, Congressman Forbes. I see we're hitting the witching hour here in terms of our time in the room. What I would also like to do is thank you as well for coming and attending and participating today. Wish you all happy holidays. Look forward to seeing you again the new year. By way of infomercial, we do have a number of studies that are getting ready for publication in 2015. One deals with some of the trends that Bob talked about, trends in more detail, though, with respect to air-to-air combat, for example, undersea operations, something we call archipelagic defense, which looks at expanding the role of air-sea battle to look at how ground forces will be integrated into a truly joint and combined, which means with our allies, efforts. Jim Thomas is looking at the contributions that some of our allies can make in the Western Pacific. We've already have a study out last year on the United Arab Emirates. Somebody called them the Spartan of the Persian Gulf recently. That just didn't occur to me that they were the Sparta of the Persian Gulf. Or maybe they're the Prussians, I don't know. But also looking at Australia, Taiwan, and Japan in terms of the Western Pacific. So we have a number of things coming out, and hopefully we'll have a chance to engage with you in the coming months. But again, thanks for coming, and best wishes for the holidays and the new year.